Hi guys and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today we are talking about Aune S9C, and if I'm correct, that's the flagship model of Aune. It is a DAC, but it is also a headphone amp, and it does both of these things quite good. For its DAC section, Aune used Sabre chip, actually two of them, and I'll put that on the screen. And you can use these DACs over single-ended RCA outputs or balanced XLR outs. And both of these are variable too, so you can attenuate the volume on the unit itself and basically use it as a simple preamp if you want. If you want line level output to use with your integrated or your preamp that will do volume attenuation, you just crank up the volume to the max on this unit and you'll get normal line level outputs, 2 point something and 5 volts on single-ended and balanced outputs respectively. As for the digital inputs, you have the usual USB, coaxial SPDIF and optical connection. There is also an external clock input, but I'm not sure that many buyers of this device will use that, but hey, if you want to do that, it's there. But as I said previously, S9C is not only a DAC, it's also a headphone amp, and Aune says it's done with discrete components. And the power of this head amp is also really high. It maxes out at 5 watts on its balanced output. By the way, the balanced output is fully balanced this time. So we have single-ended 6.35 millimeters and balanced 4.4 millimeters Pentacon. And balanced one offers between 3 and 4 times more power than the single-ended one. So if there's any way for you to use balanced connection to your headphones, use it. You'll notice a sound improvement and just more kick, better control, better grip. Aside from that, I'll turn it on quickly. You can see that there is quite a nicely sized screen in front and a volume knob. And you turn on the unit here in the back, and I'm not sure if you can see it here on the camera, but display is nice, digits are big and easily readable, and you can control it nicely using the volume knob, and it doubles as a button, but you also have a small remote, which is made out of aluminum, the same as the main unit by the way, and it looks really nice and stylish. It has all the main functions like volume, input selection, output selection, and also mode selection, which is the only thing you can tinker with. There are 2 modes here. Mode 1 is for low latency and stable connection. Mode 2 changes PLL settings in a way that Aune claims you get a cleaner, more audiophile sound. And I have to say this here. I tried both of these, and while I noticed that Mode 2 is cleaner and crisper sounding one, slightly of course, it's not a huge difference, I actually preferred Mode 1 because it brought a bit of warmth and it just sounded fuller and nicer to me with several headphones and in my stereo setup. And I have no problem saying that. I preferred Mode that supposedly is not technically superior, but what can I say? I'm a human, I work on emotions, I'm not a computer, I don't work on numbers and technicalities. And with that, I think we covered most of the features and functions, and it's now time to talk about the sound. Aune S9C as a DAC sounds really open and bright, and there's plenty of information, there's plenty of precision and detail retrieval. Now, no matter what kind of music I listened to, it always separated instruments and tones really nicely. Edges are clear, but they're not overcooked and over-etched. They're just really crisp and nice. Quick transients are really quick and once again crisp. And there is a sensation that there is a lot of air and light around instruments. So as I said, it's open and bright and airy sounding DAC. Bassline is more on a grippy and quick side of things. It's not one that will impress you with some sort of insane punch and heavy weight kind of sound. And the mid-range is simply really informative and really high resolution. And as I said, when you pair that with those quick transients, everything sounds very revealing. And another thing to mention is that the soundstage is quite wide and tall, but I don't feel that there is much of depth to talk about. So it doesn't do things in this perspective, but more like big canvas kind of sound. But instead of using many words to describe how it sounds, I'll just compare it to some of the best DACs around this price point, slightly below, slightly above, to see how it actually performs. So the first one I compared it with was Topping E70 Velvet. And that is $450 DAC, but it's only a DAC. It doesn't have a headphone output. So I was hoping that Aune here can match that separate DAC. And I would be happy if that's the case. And yes, Aune matched it and then some. First of all, I noticed that Aune sounds crisper and clearer. So instruments are better etched. They sound slightly crisper and cleaner in space. They're more securely etched in their place. There's also a sensation of more space and more air in between one instrument, the other one, vocal, things like that. E70 Velvet blends these a little bit more and into a little smaller soundstage. Now, the difference with sound staging is not huge. It's like going from 48-inch TV to 55-inch TV. It's not a huge difference by any means, but you can appreciate that extra amount of area and space. And I feel it's something like that with Aune and Topping E70 Velvet. Aune is just slightly wider, slightly taller sounding, but you pair it with that greater precision of placing instruments, of pinpointing them in their exact spots, and then separating them with a bit more of empty space and a bit more airiness. And generally speaking, Aune S9C sounds more revealing and more open than E70 Velvet. But that said, it's also tonally a little bit leaner. E70 Velvet is a bit fuller and warmer sounding DAC, especially in that mid-bass, bass and lower mid-range section. It has more warmth. This one is slightly leaner and colder, but technically more accomplished and offers wider and taller soundstage. And for a combined DAC and headphone amp of this price, it's actually great. Now next, I moved to a pricier Topping D70 Pro Sabre, and this one costs the same as Aune S9C, but it's a standalone DAC only. It doesn't have a headphone amplifier. So when I compared these two, they were quite equally matched, but Topping D70 Pro has a slightly darker background, and it felt just ever so slightly cleaner sounding. And because of that darker background, I from time to time feel like tones are emerging and feeling just a little bit more three-dimensional with a little bit better and more secured body and that core of the tone than with Aune that felt equally resolving and equally clear and crispy, but that insane background darkness from D70 Pro Sabre was just not there, and because of that it feels slightly shallower, it sounds slightly more shallow, but it's at the same time a little bit airier. So you might feel like Aune has more of light coming from the window and shining on your soundstage. And everything else is quite comparable. So these are basically the same tier DACs, but they offer slightly different tonalities and qualities. And if you only need a DAC, personally, I would still go with D70 Pro Sabre because it is a small margin, but it is a slightly better sounding DAC in my opinion. But if you do need a headphone output too, you can rest assured that you get almost equally good DAC, definitely same tier DAC with a headphone output too. Now this last DAC comparison was with Chord Mojo 2. This one is definitely fuller sounding. It has richer tone timbre, and that especially goes in that mid-range and lower mid-range section. So if you listen to some nice vocals or simply acoustic instruments, all of these will sound more natural. They will be effortlessly fuller and richer sounding with Mojo 2. But on the other hand, Aune has slightly better dynamics and drive and kick. So if you listen to some pop music with lots of bass energy and great drive and kick that goes all the time, maybe some sort of beat, then Aune will be slightly more engaging and quicker and punchier sounding. But I think it becomes really interesting if we move to headphone outputs of both Aune and Mojo 2. Now this tonal difference, this difference in terms of tone timbre and warmer and fuller sound of Mojo 2, and leaner and tidier sound with more focus on clean edges and crisp fast transients of Aune S9C, those still remain. Everything is the same. And if you would to listen only low-key music, vocals, acoustic instruments, I still prefer Mojo 2 a little bit. But once again, if I would to listen to some very energetic music, very engaging music, Aune S9C this time over headphone outputs makes an even bigger gap. I think it's because of this great power and great drive it provides on its headphone output that Mojo 2 simply cannot match. So there is more kick, there is more slam, and in some songs where Mojo 2 would sound nice and well balanced, but the bass line would maybe be slightly softer, more relaxed, warmer, Aune will strike with greater intent and with greater precision, and there's just more kick, more engagement and excitement. It was also really noticeable in a song like this one, for example, where there are those bass kicks and energetic tones, but there is also from time to time like a lingering bass note in the background that goes all the time, while other things are playing and happening in the song. And in such cases, like in this song, I was really surprised how cleaner and just grippier and more in control Aune sounded. It could keep that background bass going deep and energetic and clean, while providing great separation from these other instruments, and everything sounded well separated. You never feel that that bass is muddying anything else happening in the recording. While with Mojo 2, in such songs, that bass simply influences everything else in the track more, and not in a good way in these cases. It's blending a bit more, there's less separation and less clarity. So if you're a fan of electronic music, of pop music with strong bass lines, especially these heavy, continuous, energetic basses, I think that you would definitely prefer what Aune offers, because it seems that it has a really great headphone amplifier. When I listen to my headphones with Aune here, I have no problem believing that I have a stack with a beefy headphone amp instead of all-in-one device. So I guess that they used this size well, because this is one big and chunky device. It's weighty, it's quite big. there is, I forgot to say that in the beginning, there is a linear power supply inside. So there is a transformer, there is a really big bank of capacitors inside. And as I said, headphone amplifier is done with discrete components. And I'm not sure about that, but since it runs quite warm, I believe that either it's Class A design, but probably not completely, they would brag about it. Instead, I suppose it's heavily biased towards A-class. It is a big device. Check the size before you decide to purchase it. Check if you have enough space on your desktop. So, it's big, it's chunky, it runs warm, it doesn't care about ecology that much, it seems, and I love it. It just feels good using it. It has great power, it works great with everything I throw at it, from small sensitive in-ear models to big and really power-hungry headphones, low impedances, high impedances. And more than that, there is thing that you cannot objectively review, and that is that I just felt that this nice finish and nice build and this big readable screen and this nice stylish remote and all of that power, I felt like, yeah, this is a good purchase. This is a purchase that makes me feel good about it, and it makes me feel good using it. As much as I really do appreciate the sound and the technology of Mojo 2, of such great sound coming out of such small box, I really do enjoy using these classical, big, premium finished, nice normal commands and the display kind of devices. And Aune combines all of that. It offers great use experience, at least for me, that's a very personal thing, and really great performance across the board. It's a great DAC, it's a great headphone amp. The only thing you need to think about is that kind of tonality that's really open, really informative, but brighter sounding, a kind of tonality, is that your thing? Or would that pair well with what you are using? For example, I wouldn't listen to AKG K702 that I have with this DAC amp. That would be too bright in my opinion. But something like VRM1 or Gold Planar GL2000s sound pretty darn good with it. So if that kind of tonality is something that would suit you personally, or your headphones or your stereo setup, this is a really well-rounded, high quality sounding device. And for $750 you get a DAC that is in the tier of other $750 DACs, and you get a headphone amp that might actually be the best headphone amp that I heard in a 2-in-1 device at this price point. And that would be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.